Welcome back to another Morpher Devlog. This last week, I worked on getting the final boss level of my sector finished, and this is how it turned out. The first thing I needed to work on this week was getting this new mechanic, the mag lift, introduced. It's sort of this spring pad that the player can jump off of to get to much greater heights. So here's that working, and I think it's really fun to play with. It really increases my ability to create vertical levels. For level 6 in particular is going to be extremely crucial. Keeping in the theme of my Donkey Kong Country inspiration, we're going back to Donkey Kong Country 2 and looking at the level Castle Crush. Now in this level, the player has to avoid obstacles as this floor slowly increases and brings down the ceiling above them. Since level 6 is the last level of Sector Alpha, I wanted to give kind of a sneak peek of Sector Bravo, which has a very lava-heavy theme. A lot of broken down structures and piping and lava everywhere. Instead of having the floor raise up to meet the player, instead this lava sort of chases the player through, which actually reminds me more of this level, again from Donkey Kong Country 2. It's sort of this acid that's rising up as the player springs through in snake form. So, with my inspiration in mind, I got to work laying out the level. Noticed that in my level redesigns, in previous iterations of Morpher, each level felt very elongated and had a lot of lulls in the gameplay. Since this is the final level of Sector Alpha, I want the intensity to be high throughout the entire level. And so instead of making the lava chase scene go on for a very long time, or for even the entirety of the level, I break up the level into 3 major chunks. And I keep them pretty short. So after just a little way, the player hits the first checkpoint, and there's sort of this piping puzzle that I introduce, which has this laser going through that's on a timer. And the player has to sort of roll down into these sort of safe zones underneath the laser in order to avoid being hit by it. After that, there's this really cool interaction with T-bots walking through lava. And they sort of work as these falling platforms, because when the player jumps on them, the player kills them, but still jumps off, and they make it to the second checkpoint, and this introduces one of the last challenges of the level. I worked on implementing some camera shake, and I didn't want it to be too intense, but just subtle enough. Just enough, not too much. It's about half of what the... Oh no! The final lava rise section of the level has the player land on a floating platform. As they go up, they have to avoid flies and buzzsaws, and unfortunately I ran into a really weird bug, and it turns out this was a consequence of creating my cannon object in the previous episode. I rewrote a little bit of my code to adjust the speed of destroyed object particles, and unfortunately this affected the player death particle system. It ended up increasing the player death particles by a magnitude of 100, and so when the player dies on this part, some of the particles go flying up, and they ended up in this particular situation hitting the balloon and flinging it over the barrier, and it shot a laser all the way down onto the platform. After just quickly adjusting the player death particles, I got that all working out and then finished the second half of this third section. I go back to this sort of wall jumping feature of the peanut butter mechanic, and I reintroduce my turrets. I've talked about my turret enemies in previous episodes and how much I didn't really like them, mainly because they were really difficult to predict and they weren't super fun to play around. I think this one in particular is okay because it follows the player very slowly and it shoots very infrequently, and it really doesn't act as a major challenge in this final stretch. The player really just has to time their jumps, make sure they don't land into buzzsaws or lasers, and they finish out the level after this. One quick sprite making tip that I noticed during this time was, instead of pre-coloring sprites, I found it easier to color all of my sprites white and then in-game adjust them so that way it could perfectly match color schemes, or just later change colors if I wanted to, or use the same asset for multiple enemies, which was something that I noticed for my maglift object. I changed the glow around the maglift to just a white gradient instead of black, and it just allowed much more room in terms of colorization. I threw on these gears and wheels onto my turret as it follows the player up and down, and they sort of spin in this cool way. And I also got to work on adding a sprite glow outline to both my peanut butter objects to really make them pop out so the player doesn't miss them, as well as the lava for just that cool post-processing effect. I really like how this turned out. I tune it down a little bit from here. I think this is a bit too much glow. I really want the player to be able to focus on what is important in this level, because it's very high intensity, it's quick, fast-paced, and the player needs to be able to think on their feet and make really speedy decisions. Now, again, in the vein of introducing themes that are going to be present in Sector Bravo, I changed the outro system instead from vertical doors to this sort of horizontal chute or tube that opens up and closes. Around this time, Unity just released their device simulator, which I went ahead and tried out, and I think for the most part I've been keeping in mind different device aspect ratios already, and so this isn't a super useful tool, but I can definitely see how many developers will benefit greatly from this, as the most important feature in my opinion is the bounding box showing the safe area for visual elements. And so moving forward, this is going to be an extremely useful tool. So, finally, with one entire sector finished, full of 6 power-packed levels, I built a prototype, and I'll just show you some raw gameplay now. This project has been a huge passion of mine for several years now, and now that I'm finally going about finishing this game, I'm getting really motivated, and I'm really excited to see what the future holds. Sector Bravo is going to bring in a whole host of new and exciting elements, and I'm really looking forward to how all of these elements are going to interact as I move forward. It's been a lot of fun, but in the next couple of weeks I'm going to be starting school, and so I'm not going to have as much free time. I've already been having to balance my project with work, as well as just general fitness and health and just taking care of myself. And so I think I'm going to have much less free time in the coming months. I'm going to be scaling back my upload schedule to every other week, but I'm going to keep up my intensity on working on this project. It's really something that I want to finish, and I have no plans on giving up just yet. So, stay tuned for more updates. Like I said, I have a lot planned. If you like this video and you want to support this project, please leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Anyway, I'll leave you here with the rest of this gameplay, and I'll see you all in 2 weeks.